Welcome to this video on Mars. I have some very important new information on the planet Mars that I would like to share with you. I'm going to give you a perspective on Mars that you will not find anywhere else. As a matter of fact, it is so unique that many will have great difficulty in accepting what is at huge variance to their present belief structures. My name is Arthur Bobian. I have a PhD, and I worked for Health Canada for 25 years as a research scientist. I am now retired, and for the past 15 years, I have devoted a lot of time to the study of the planet Mars, mostly using the maps that were generated from the data obtained from the Mars Orbiter Laser Altimeter, which was an instrument aboard the Mars Global Surveyor satellite. I have found that these maps are the most faithful to the original data, and you can make very accurate coordinate measurements from them. After studying these maps very intensively and making thousands of precise measurements, I have discovered that Mars has a lot to tell us in terms of both science and spirituality. I have found that Mars is related to the planet Earth in many ways. It is connected to the megalithic sites such as Stonehenge in the British Isles and to sites in Brittany, France. It is also connected to ancient Greece. And I have found a very strong connection to the ancient concept of Om, a primordial sound that was thought to have brought the universe into existence. But first I wish to dispel the misconception of Mars that NASA has been promoting for several decades now. NASA has been indoctrinating us with a perception of Mars as a dead planet that has never hosted intelligent life. Nothing could be further from the truth than this. So this video will concentrate on providing you with proof that an ancient civilization has existed on Mars in the past, and that this civilization was many orders of magnitude beyond our own in both science and technology, as well as in spirituality. I use the word proof because what I am about to reveal to you is neither hypothesis nor conjecture. It is solid fact based on solid data provided by NASA itself. Let's look at what Mars is like today. Here you can see a size comparison between Earth and Mars. Its diameter is slightly larger than 1/2 that of Earth. Since it is smaller than Earth, it has less mass, and if you were on Mars, you would only weigh about 38% of your weight that you have here on Earth. You would also have to wear a spacesuit on Mars because its atmosphere is less than 1% that of Earth's, and its atmosphere is composed of 95% of carbon dioxide with less than 1% oxygen. You would quickly freeze to death without protection since the average temperature is a very chilly -63 degrees centigrade. But it can be as high as +27 degrees centigrade at the equator on a sunny day. The length of day on Mars is very close to that of Earth, being only 39.6 minutes longer than our 24-hour day. NASA uses the term Sol for a Martian day. The Martian year is almost twice that of the planet Earth, being 687 Earth days long. So basically the surface of Mars today is very inhospitable to human life. This is a color-coded map of the Martian topography. Red is high elevation, and blue is low terrain. The giant mountains are colored white, and they are the highest elevation. The most striking feature is that the color of the northern hemisphere is blue, meaning that the elevation of the northern hemisphere is very low, and this region was probably a large ocean in ancient times. Other main features are the huge purple-colored Hellas Basin, the giant mountains, and the Valles Marineris. The Valles Marineris are a system of deep canyons running for about 5,000 kilometers. This system of canyons is about 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon here on Earth. One of the mountains, Olympus Mons, is almost 3 times the height of Mount Everest. This map is a Mercator projection map of the entire surface of Mars between 70 degrees south and 70 degrees north. Note that it is a distorted view of the planet, since the Mercator projection keeps the lines of longitude equidistant as you go towards the poles of the planet. The map shows the 2 huge basins of Argyre and Hellas in the southern hemisphere. It also shows the 4 giant mountains which are close to the equator and the Valles Marineris. Note the large red area between the giant mountains and the Argyre Basin. This is called the Tharsis Rise, and at its center it is about the height of Mount Everest above the Martian equivalent of sea level. This picture shows the region of Mars that contains all of the large mountains. On the left, there is the triple group of Elysium Mons, Issedon Tholus, and Elborn Tholus. On the right are the 4 giant mountains of Olympus Mons, Ascraeus Mons, Pavonis Mons, and Arsia Mons. Just to the left of Pavonis Mons is the smaller mountain of Issedon Tholus, which I will be discussing later. I am now going to show you how I know that an intelligent civilization has existed on Mars. The first bit of evidence to show you is the existence of survey craters. This is going to be difficult for many people to accept because we have been indoctrinated to believe that all craters have been caused by impacts from outer space. It requires a huge paradigm shift to even consider that any craters could have been intelligently engineered into existence. This is the Ascraeus Mons mountain. It is quite symmetrical and has a caldera that is centrally located. However, if you needed to know the exact position of its center, you would need some way to survey for this location. Incredibly, I have discovered that craters have been artificially created for this purpose. I call them survey craters, and they exist for all the major mountains on Mars. 2 or more survey craters have been placed at highly meaningful distances from the exact centers of the mountains. There is only one point on the mountain that is at these distances from all of these craters. So this gives a way of determining the intended center of the mountain. In the case of Ascraeus Mons, there are 2 survey craters that are located to the north of the mountain. They are both at the distance of the planetary radius r divided by 2 times the irrational number pi. These craters don't have official names, so I have named them using the first 3 letters of the mountain's name, followed by SC, which stands for survey crater. In the case of Elysium Mons, there are 6 survey craters. 3 are located at a distance of the planetary radius r, divided by 3 times the irrational number pi. 2 are located at a distance of the planetary radius r, divided by 4 times the irrational number pi. And 1 is located at a distance of the planetary radius r, divided by 13. Note that 13 is a Fibonacci number. What you will notice is that the survey center of Elysium Mons does not coincide with the real center of the mountain, where its caldera is located. You will see that the survey center of Elysium Mons serves a different but very important function. Much of the artificial nature of Martian topography will be missed if you don't have an understanding of how the ancient Martians organized their planet. Mars is structured on the basis of multiple prime meridians, 2 prime latitudes, and several unique coordinate systems. If you just go on NASA's coordinate system, you will not see how sites were positioned to honor sacred geometry. My route to the discovery and validation of the ancient prime meridians and coordinate systems is documented in my second book on Mars, so I will only present my findings here. On Earth, we have 1 prime meridian, which is located at Greenwich, England. This prime meridian is used to create longitude coordinates around the world for navigation and for survey purposes. On Mars, I have discovered that there are at least 8 prime meridians. These are used principally to create meaningful sacred geometry numbers for longitude coordinates of various structures on the planet. I have shown that the location of these prime meridians with vertical lines on this map. Although there are 8 prime meridians, only 4 vertical lines are shown. This is because the prime meridians occur in pairs, where the 2 members of the pair are only about 4/1 of a degree apart and can't be resolved on this map. On Earth, we use the equator as a prime latitude. On Mars, 2 ancient prime latitudes were used to create meaningful sacred geometry numbers for the latitude coordinates of various structures on the planet. One of these is the equator, and the other passes through the survey center of Elysium Mons. This picture shows the locations of the first 4 ancient prime meridians at a higher magnification. The yellow line on the left is aligned to a linear segment of the western perimeter of an unnamed crater. I call this prime meridian the crater edge prime meridian, and it is the most westerly prime meridian. To the north of this crater, the survey center of Elysium Mons marks the location of the second prime meridian. It is marked by a yellow cross on the mountain, and it is located several kilometers east of the caldera of the mountain. I call this prime meridian the Elysium Mons prime meridian, and it is located about 4/1 of a degree east of the crater edge prime meridian. So here we see that a major purpose of the survey center of Elysium Mons is to mark a prime meridian. To the east of the crater marking the first prime meridian is a dagger-shaped region hollowed out in the Martian terrain. Inside the hilt of the dagger, there is a white-colored peak which locates the third prime meridian. I placed a red cross on top of this peak to mark it, and I call this the Dagger Peak prime meridian. The peak is exactly 1 degree of longitude east of the crater edge prime meridian. The middle of the dagger handle is indicated by a vertical yellow line. This marks the fourth prime meridian, which I call the dagger midline prime meridian, and it is exactly 1 degree of longitude east of the Elysium Mons prime meridian. The next pair of prime meridians are located on the top of Pavonis Mons. The western member of the pair is located by the survey center of Pavonis Mons, which is marked by the yellow cross at the top of the picture. I call this prime meridian the Pavonis Mons prime meridian. It occurs exactly 100 degrees east of the crater edge prime meridian. The eastern member of the pair is located at the center of the Pavonis Mons caldera, marked by the lower yellow cross. I call this prime meridian the Pavonis caldera prime meridian. It occurs exactly 100 degrees east of the Elysium Mons prime meridian. Like the previous pairs of prime meridians, the members of this pair of prime meridians are approximately 4 minutes of a degree apart from one another. The final pair of prime meridians are associated with the Sharonov crater, which is about 95 kilometers in diameter. On the northwest side of the crater, there is a triangular region marked by a trench. I placed a red triangle on top of the trench in the picture. The spot where the southern vertex of the triangle touches the perimeter of the Sharonov crater marks the 7th prime meridian, which I call the Sharonov triangle prime meridian. It occurs exactly 54 degrees east of the Pavonis Mons prime meridian. Inside the southwest side of the Sharonov crater, there is a small white dot which I have labeled as the tower. This marks the 8th and final prime meridian, and I call it the Sharonov Tower prime meridian. It occurs exactly 54 degrees east of the Pavonis caldera prime meridian and about 4 minutes of a degree east of the Sharonov triangle prime meridian. This table summarizes the 8 prime meridians of Mars. It can be seen that the 8 prime meridians are divided into 2 sets of 4. I have used bold type to distinguish set number 2 from set number 1. The non-bolded rows of set number 1 are synchronized to the crater edge prime meridian. If we go to the second last column, we see that the Dagger Peak prime meridian is exactly 1 degree east of the crater edge prime meridian. The Pavonis Mons prime meridian is exactly 100 degrees east of the crater edge prime meridian, and the Sharonov triangle prime meridian is exactly 154 degrees east of the crater edge prime meridian. Similarly, the bolded rows of set number 2 are synchronized to the Elysium Mons prime meridian. The Dagger midline prime meridian is 1 degree east of Elysium Mons. The Pavonis caldera prime meridian is 100 degrees east of Elysium, and the Sharonov Tower prime meridian is 154 degrees east of the Elysium Mons prime meridian. I measured the 2 sets to be 4.06 minutes of a degree apart, so the intended difference may be exactly 4 minutes of a degree. Besides the presence of multiple prime meridians and 2 prime latitudes, but also hides important coordinates of sites on Mars from terrestrial trained eyes, is the use of multiple degree systems. We only use the 360-degree system on planet Earth to measure longitude and latitude coordinates. The ancient Martians not only used a 360-degree system, but they also almost certainly used a 720-degree system. More importantly, they also used a 320-degree system and a 288-degree system. The 320-degree system divides the planet into 320 degrees with a degree size of 1.125, or 1 1/8 of our regular degrees. I call this system the big degree system, and I use 2 degree symbols to distinguish it from the other systems. The 288 degree system divides the planet into 288 degrees, with a degree size equal to 1.25, or 1 1/4 of our regular degrees. I call this system the sacred degree system, and I use 3 degree symbols to distinguish it from the other systems. If you don't know the existence of these degree systems, you will miss a lot of very meaningful coordinates of sites on Mars. Now that you are better equipped to understand Mars, I am going to show you the Issedon Tholus mountain. If you remember, this mountain lies to the west of Pavonis Mons. Issedon Tholus is a large billboard telling us that engineering has taken place on Mars. First of all, the distance between the 2 large craters on its surface works out to be exactly 1 degree. The degree size is equal to the length of a degree of latitude, or 59.3 kilometers. So here is a marker, visible from outer space, of the length of 1 degree of latitude, which can be used by overhead spacecraft for calibration purposes. Note that the bearing angle of the line connecting the 2 craters is 27 degrees in the counterclockwise direction. 27 is an important number on Mars because it is 1/4 of the number of degrees of the interior angles of a pentagon, or of the angle between the star points of a pentagram. 2 geometric figures which play an important role in sacred geometry. If we take a closer look at the northern crater, we see that there are 2 peaks inside the crater. The more northern peak occurs right at the center of the crater. The latitude of the northern peak is exactly pi big degrees north. If you did not know about big degrees, you would not discern this. The longitude of the northern peak is 50 sacred degrees west of the Sharonov triangle prime meridian. If you did not know about sacred degrees, or about the Sharonov triangle prime meridian, you would not be able to discern this. The more southern peak is at the same longitude as the northern peak. It also marks the latitude of pi big degrees north, but this time in planetographic coordinates. Planetographic coordinates take into account the ellipsoidal nature of Mars, in which the northern polar radius of Mars is about 20 kilometers shorter than the equatorial radius. The latitude of the more northern peak is measured in planetocentric coordinates, which treat the planet as a perfect sphere having a radius equal to the radius at the equator. All of NASA's coordinates are planetocentric, as well as most of the ancient Martian coordinates. So here we have 2 measures of pi in big degrees. Also, the ratio of the area enclosed by the perimeter of the entire mountain to the area of its huge caldera is approximately equal to pi. So this mountain honors the value of pi in a big way. Now, if we look closely at the interior of the southeastern crater, we find there is a rectangular area of brightness. A greatly enlarged picture of the bright rectangular area in the southeast crater on Issedon Tholus shows that the pixels making up the rectangle get progressively brighter as they progress from south to north. This suggests that the rectangular area represents a ramp, which gets higher from south to north. The latitude of the top of the ramp at the location of the black cross is exactly E degrees north. However, it is measured in planetographic coordinates, which treat the planet as an ellipsoid. The constant E is an irrational number with a value of 2.7183, and it is known as Euler's constant. It is the base of the natural log. The purpose of the ramp most likely is to create a monument to the irrational number E. This is a picture of a small mountain named Issedon Tholus. The elevation of this mountain is only 826 meters, so it looks rather flat in this picture. What is very interesting is that the entire mountain sits in an area of low terrain which has the shape of a golden rectangle. The length of a golden rectangle is 1.618 times its width. The value of 1.618 is the value of the golden ratio, phi. The yellow arrow points to the caldera of the mountain. It is very small, being only about 2 kilometers in diameter. If we look inside the caldera at high magnification, we can see that there is an east-pointing arrow colored white in the picture. The latitude of the tip is exactly 36 degrees north, which is the angle size of a star point of a pentagram. Incredibly, the longitude of the tip of the arrow is 36 degrees west of the Sharonov Tower prime meridian. This establishes the artificiality of the arrow shape beyond a reasonable doubt. It also lends much credence to the Sharonov Tower prime meridian. The remarkable coordinates of the arrow tip, together with the fact that Issedon Tholus sits inside a golden rectangle, suggests that the entire mountain of Issedon Tholus is artificial. We have just seen an arrow shape in the caldera of Issedon Tholus. Actually, the arrow shape is quite common on the surface of Mars. In this picture, you can see several examples of craters that have the shape of an arrowhead or simply a wedge shape that points in a particular direction. Some of them have a clear shaft, while with others the shaft is either very short or absent. In the first two rows, the arrow shape is formed by the perimeter of the crater. In the bottom row, a very clear arrow shape occurs in the interior of the crater, like the arrow shape in the Issedon Tholus caldera. Remarkably, over 90% of the more than 100 arrow-shaped craters present on Mars point due east or due west, and most of the remainder point due south or due north. The chance of this occurring by randomness is much less than 1 in a trillion, so this fact alone proves artificiality. Interestingly, the arrow tips of arrow-shaped craters, or of arrow shapes inside craters, all have either a meaningful longitude or latitude, or both. Here is another important example of an arrow shape on Mars. This picture shows a huge arrow shape projecting from the west side of the Ophir Chasma in the Valles Marineris. The northern side of the arrow has a bearing angle of 72 degrees in the clockwise direction and is about 38 kilometers long. The value of 72 is the number of degrees of an angle at the base of a star point of a pentagram. The southern side of the arrow has a bearing angle of 60 degrees in the counterclockwise direction and is about 67 kilometers long. The value of 60 is the size of the angles of an equilateral triangle. The tip of the arrow is at the longitude of 10 phi degrees west of the Sharonov triangle prime meridian. Its latitude has the remarkable value of pi sacred degrees south, thus validating the sacred degree system. There are several linear grooves and ridges on the surface of Mars that mark out the distance of a degree or fraction of a degree. Here is an example of a perfectly straight groove which has a length of 1/2 of a latitude degree, which makes it equal to 29.64 kilometers. This groove could be used by an overhead spacecraft for calibration purposes. The southern end of the groove marks the longitude of 54 square root 2 big degrees east of the Elysium Mons prime meridian, and the latitude of 5 degrees south. Note that 54 is half the number of degrees between the star points of a pentagram. This groove has a bearing angle of 7.5 degrees in the clockwise direction from due north. Besides the presence of short linear grooves, there are some grooves that travel intermittently in a straight line for enormous distances. In this picture, we see a groove line that crosses the eastern part of the Argyre Basin and travels intermittently for 1,350 kilometers. The entire line is shown at low magnification in the picture on the left. Parts of the groove line are shown at higher magnification in the 10 narrow pictures to the right. The entire groove has a bearing angle of 7.5 degrees in the clockwise direction. The bearing angle of 7.5 degrees in the clockwise or counterclockwise direction is the most common bearing angle for groove and ridge lines on the surface of Mars. Here is a long ridge line located east of Arsia Mons. Once again, this line has a bearing angle of 7.5 degrees in the clockwise direction. What is remarkable about this line is that it has a length of 1 sacred degree, which is a distance of 74.09 kilometers. It can be viewed from outer space for calibration purposes. It also validates the use of sacred degrees on Mars. This picture shows a unique crater which has the shape of a pentagon. I have labeled it NN37 in my numbering system since it does not have an official name. To the west of the crater is a ridge with a bearing angle of 0 degrees, which means it points to the north and south poles. To the southeast of the crater is a larger ridge whose linear top has a bearing angle of 36 degrees in the counterclockwise direction. What is interesting is that if you extrapolate the line which fits the top of the southeastern ridge, you intersect two vertices of the pentagon outline which fits the pentagon-shaped crater. Two angles of 36 degrees are created by the extrapolated line, which is the same value as the bearing angle of the ridge line. The value of 36 is the number of degrees of the tip of a star point of a pentagram. The coordinates of the center of the pentagon-shaped crater are quite extraordinary. To begin with, the latitude is capital Phi degrees north, where capital Phi is the inverse of the golden ratio and is equal to 0.618. The longitude of the center is even more amazing. It has a longitude of 100 capital Phi degrees west from the crater edge prime meridian. It also has a longitude of 100 lowercase phi degrees west from the Pavonis Mons prime meridian. Lowercase phi stands for the golden ratio, which is equal to 1.618. This arrangement is more clearly shown in the next picture. If you look at the line at the bottom of the picture, the black portion of the line represents the number of longitude degrees between the NN37 crater and the crater edge prime meridian, and it is equal to 61.8034 degrees. The red portion of the line represents the number of longitude degrees between the crater edge prime meridian and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian, and it is equal to 100 degrees. Thus, the total number of degrees between the NN37 crater and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian is equal to the sum of the two portions of the line, and it is equal to 161.8034 degrees. The top of the picture shows that when you take the number of degrees of longitude between the NN37 crater and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian and divide it by the number of degrees between the crater edge prime meridian and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian, you get the value of the golden ratio phi. You also get the value of phi if you divide the number of degrees between the crater edge prime meridian and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian by the number of degrees between the NN37 crater and the crater edge prime meridian. This arrangement is solid proof of the artificiality of the NN37 crater and also establishes the validity of the crater edge prime meridian and the Pavonis Mons prime meridian. We have now seen irrefutable evidence that an intelligent civilization existed on Mars that had the capacity to create large craters on important coordinates. We have seen the artificiality of a small mountain called Issedon Tholus, which is situated in a depressed area having the shape of a golden rectangle. We have seen a groove line with a length of 0.5 degrees, a ridge line with a length of 1 sacred degree, and the distance of 1 degree between two craters on the Issedon Tholus mountain. We have seen that groove and ridge lines most often have a bearing angle of 7.5 degrees. A linear groove was shown that travels intermittently for a distance of 1,350 kilometers. We have seen arrow-shaped craters that could not have formed naturally, since craters are supposed to be round, and the arrow shapes most often point due east or due west. Other arrow shapes were shown which had very meaningful coordinates. None of this could have resulted naturally, and could only have been produced by a highly advanced civilization. A much bigger picture of the artificiality of the Martian topography is given in a series of 3 books, which I have written using the general title of Intelligent Mars. The first book, Intelligent Mars 1, Sacred Geometry of the Mountains, Did Da Vinci Know?, deals with the artificiality of the major mountains on Mars. It shows that the major mountains are artificially arranged in patterns which reflect sacred geometry. An important pyramid is also revealed, which has the shape of a pentagram. The book demonstrates how this pentagram pyramid is used to construct a virtual Vitruvian Martian, which fits the 4 giant mountains of Olympus Mons and the Tharsis Mons. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man appears to be modeled on this Vitruvian Martian. The second book, Intelligent Mars 2, Code of the Craters, demonstrates that many Martian craters are the result of engineering as opposed to arising from impacts. Artificiality was detected in the shape and size of a number of craters, with some of them having an overall contour of a regular polygon, such as a square, pentagon, hexagon, or octagon. Craters in the shape of a regular polygon were found to be sized according to the interval sizes of the chromatic scale, betraying an advanced knowledge of music by the ancient Martian architects. Other craters have very sophisticated functions, such as mimicking an eye, which looks over the mountain architecture from a huge distance. Intelligent Mars 2 also presents my route to the discovery of the coordinate systems and prime meridians used by the ancient Martian civilization. The book Intelligent Mars 3, Ohm and the Architect, shows that the entire planet of Mars is actually a massive spherical sculpture which encodes sacred scripture in its landscape. Its topography tells the story of creation by a primordial Ohm sound and other progenitors. The sculpture also includes Alba Mons, the Valles Marineris, and the Hellas Basin, likely to depict the evolutionary journey of the soul through several lifetimes. A large crater reveals that the Martian civilization had a profound understanding of Ohm. Markings around this crater and elsewhere suggest a strong connection to the ancient Greeks. This book also goes into much detail about groove and ridge lines, arrow-shaped craters, calibration markers for spacecraft, and landmarks honoring the irrational numbers of pi, phi, e, square root of 2, square root of 3, and the square root of 5. The full 3D image created by Mars is so encompassing that one is led to suspect that the entire planet must have been created from the bottom up, perhaps in a planet factory, by an advanced civilization many orders of magnitude beyond our own in technical capabilities. This concludes my video on Mars. For those wishing to pursue this further, the 3 books mentioned can be purchased on Amazon and other online bookstores. Thank you for watching.